Part 1. Check this out. The elm that I had and I sawed down, it doesn't look like it opened up all that long. This has been sitting indoors after cutting and after splitting it down. Gosh, I don't know, maybe a year? Probably less. Took the bark off. Boy, this is a big honker. It's hard to see the angles and stuff, but I've been watching it. It opened up. After, what, like a week and a half or so, taking the bark off. And so, you know, unless you want to wait a really long time, take the bark off. It's incredible how much that has dried and opened up just in a couple weeks. So yeah, you know, I suppose if you want to be ultra patient, just leave the bark on. But you know, from now on, I'm taking the bark off as soon as possible. The same dealio with this, and boy, I'm glad that I didn't turn this into individual staves. That's opened up quite a bit too since I took the bark off, because it needs to sit around for a while. Now, I did manage to get like bow-shaped things, you know, out of another section, and it did all right. They stayed pretty dry, or pretty straight. But oh my gosh, these things curved, you know, the pie shape, and this is the other one. That's off the same piece that these are that stayed pretty straight. So yeah, you know, obviously, if you're going to take something, you're going to split it. You work it green. If you turn it into a bow-shaped thing, rectangular cross-section or what have you, kind of bow-like, your chances of it staying straight, you know, yeah, Captain Obvious, are a lot better than if you just split the thing. And elm, for me, elm is the biggest, like, contributor to frustrations as far as warping when it dries. Now this is, I didn't get around to it, but I'm seeing it's one of those woods that did all right. This is choke cherry. You might say, well, how are you going to get a straight bow out of that? Or a gull wing? Because choke cherry, as I've been told, is prized by the natives out west as far as its bow building abilities. I'm looking for something here. Oh. Now this pretty much came out of something that was shaped like this. And I simply, you can see the scorch marks, did it overheat. My chiminea, burning bowwood scraps, which is a really cool thing to do. Getting it hot, scorching it, basically, and then using a pad over my knee and shaping it like this. And when I came down here, I fully intended to just talk about this, about the philosophy of bows. The majesty and the magic of bows. When you think about the alchemy of the native people as far as their bows, first of all, if you've seen my gull wings before that I steam bent, very pronounced. If you look in reference material libraries and stuff like that, museums, you see a lot of the bows are more subtle. And most likely, if they were sinew back, they were using some form of like wet method like I use. I'll take my sinew, prepare it, put it in a baggie with a hide glue mixture so it absorbs, and you've heard this before, and not so thick, not so viscous, not such a heavy glue mix that it will gel unless it's hot. You know, and I like that. You don't need the double boiler, you just soak the things. You might put your baggie with the glue mixture and the big bundle of sinew, which pulls out easy because they're slippery. You know, you're not going to have a bird's nest if you're careful. Taking your entire sinew bundle and pulling it out one fiber at a time, which BTW is not slower than preparing all those bundles and combing them out, you know, and straightening. You put the bundle on, you don't want them to be all crisscrossed and stuff. It's actually very fast, just pulling them out of the baggie and sticking them on. It's extremely fast, very convenient. Let's get back into the original bows. There's something majestic, and I'm not using that word lightly. There's something majestic about taking your bow scraps or what have you and heat shaping your bow. I don't imagine the people that were riding horses and hunting buffalo were setting up double boilers, you know what I mean? Or steaming things. You can steam things in simple ways, but you don't basically heat. Shaping things into subtle curves, and also heat treating your bow at the same time, which is good. Fire hardening, whatever you want to say. Fire is heat. Getting the subtle curves. You're not going to get, with Osage you can easily, and Old Mulberry, and some other woods, you know, the severe bends from heat shaping. But, you know, it isn't like I want to have a bow that has all this incredible thing. In my case, it was getting a pretty bow and getting the ginks out, because it was all sorts of roller coastery. And now it's even, and it makes me happy, you know, and it's straight. Getting into the subtleties, it's hard to explain. It's morning, I'm getting ready to go to work, but think about it. I used orbital disc sander in parts, you know, and tools that they didn't have access to. But when it comes down to the sinew backing and the heat shaping and the care it takes to work down to what you want to work down to, you know, it's pretty similar. And even though I used some power tools, let's face it, and some steel tools that they didn't have, you know, the finishing project, the processes as far as the heat shaping and the sinew backing, pretty similar. And so you can get a similar product. This makes me happy. Now the subtleties. You look through the encyclopedia of bows, arrows, and quivers of the Native Americans, and you see these shapes of the bows. And a lot of times they'll be just downright parallel, about an inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch, slightly less than an inch, but basically parallel. And sometimes like this style of tips, you know, where it kind of constricts and goes in. And when I cut this out following, you know, the diagrams, following the numbers, it's like, well, you know, it just looks like a yardstick. It's not too exciting. But subtleties, the subtle gull wing, the taper, which I need to refine the taper, you know, it's thick here and it gets thinner here, changes this yardstick, this splint, into something graceful and really attractive. And you don't see the beauty of the bow really until it's complete, because it's a bunch of little parts that go together. I'm just waxing poetic here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. That little tiny cherry bow, it's somewhere. I mean, I've got stashes of to be turned into almost bows, and then almost bows, and then completed bows over there. Doing things production line style, and I'll explain why here. I don't know. Of all the bows that I've made, this simple choke cherry bow, you know, really turns my screws, just because I'm looking at it and it just has this feeling that, you know, it's a horse bow. It looks like it could have been in existence 150 years ago, 200 years ago. I don't know, it's super cool. Now, why I'm not going to have a finished bow in a while. Kind of rusty, you know, work gets in the way, life gets in the way. And I haven't sat down on my shaving horse and turned out a lot of stuff. And so I'm a little, the cobwebs, got to shake the cobwebs off. So what I'm doing, production line, I'm going through and I'm taking all these rough staves and logs and things like that. And I'm working down to a growth ring, getting back into practice, you know, working down in the growth ring with Osage and stuff like that there. And practicing that. Then it's practice on doing my lines and working down to, you know, stuff like this or stuff like this. Getting practiced up in that. And then it's practicing doing multiple bows, getting the initial thickness down, and then refining the sides. So I've got a bunch of them, you know, almost to this point. Then it's time to do the final shaping. And I'm doing that all production line just to get back into practice. Winding up. So I can see that I'm probably not going to have a finished bow for a while, but when I do, I'm going to have a lot of finished bows. And man, in the mornings, I wake up early, got to get to work at 8 most days, sometimes 7. Wake up at 4:30, got all that time just to drink coffee and think about how much I love my day job. Charged up my laptop. The mornings are going to be for writing my second book. And then lunch break is for lunch. And then after work, boy, I'm down here working on my shaving horse and making bows until it's time to go to bed and start that cycle all over. But, as I once thought as a kid, and I still think this way, every morning you should have something to look forward to. And it's certainly not our day jobs. That's as far as I'm going to go there. But bows for me, getting back into it, writing my second book, that's keeping me alive in here. Well, with that, my friends, this is so cool. I've got all this great bow stuff going on here. And it's a tiny little thing. This is you. Yeah. This is short. I think this is 34 inches, but wide enough to make a little tiny, like, Modoc bow, perhaps. But you know what would be cool? This would make one humdinger of a crossbow, a sinew-backed U-stayed crossbow. That would be BA. Oh, look at this. Another piece of Osage, another piece of Osage, another piece of Osage. It's a cool place. And I owe it to all to bows. Thank you.